This is Jacqueline with Nickel and Dime Decor, and several of you have asked for a new video. I have an old one, but it was a year or so ago. So on hand quilting, some of my followers have said, well, I sure can't conquer free motion quilting, so teach me how to hand quilt. And what I want to say to you ladies is, if you can't free motion quilt, which I'm one of them, is we all have talents. And appreciate the ones you have, and don't worry about the ones you don't have. Because once you learn hand quilting, you will have a talent that very few people have. So free motion quilting is something I'm just not worrying about anymore. I've fretted over it, I've tried and I can't do it. No big deal. Now, if you're expecting a great big quilting frame, one that stands on 4 legs, one that you pull down from the ceiling, I don't have either one. And you know me, I am a frugal person, and I have found this technique works for me, might not work for you, but I use a $3.99 or $2.99 embroidery hoop. That's all I use. I use a Sharp's number 10 needle. You can buy a package of just number 10 Sharps, and sometimes it says betweens. And that little needle is not that big. I'm literally telling you, I didn't bring it with me over here to show you. I will later. When I set up the camera, I'll show it to you. You're going to have a friction pin that's, you touch it with an iron and it's gone. Because if you use chalk, when you go over it with your stitching, it's hard to get that chalk that's underneath off. It doesn't work for me, it doesn't work. So, a friction pin, best invention in the world for hand quilting. And a stencil. And I am using all over loopy stencil. And for what I'm going to do on my little, I call it my cowgirl baby quilt, is I'm using it on that, and I like it because to me it mimics a rope, a lasso. And so that's why I've chosen this particular stencil. There are, I bet you 50 different stencils. There's no need to be limited. And I say there's not a limit to how many stencils you can use on a baby quilt or any quilt. The quilt that's on my husband's bed has at least 10 different designs on it. And it's a beautiful 90 by 91, and I did every inch of it by hand. I'm doing a 90 inch by 90 right now for a lady, and it has like 12 different blocks, and they're all quilted differently. And you're just not limited to what you can do. There's no rhyme or reason to it, because it's whatever looks pleasing to you. And my quilt for my husband was for a man, and I used a lot of geometrics and squares and triangles, angles like that. I didn't use flowers. I used, in one little section, I might have had a little bit of a floral, but it's basically straight lines and geometrics, and it just looks wonderful. It's on my channel if you want to search and look down. It's an Ohio Star quilt, and look for it and look at all of those squares that I did, and you'll get an idea of what you can do with the hand quilting. Okay, and that's it, and I'm going to put the camera down, and I'm going to show you what I've already got my first stencil marked. I've already traced everything, and I'm going to show you how to get started, and you're going to love it. It's the most relaxing. Once you relax and just let your mind wander, it's very, very relaxing, I think. Now, very quickly, let me show you. This is what I'm talking about. This is called big quilting. I mean, that's what I call it. On the 90 by 90 that I'm doing for this lady, it's very tiny stitches, very tiny. But for this stencil and this particular fabric, I wanted it to look more like a rope. And so that's what we're gonna do on mine right now, is this big stitching. So you don't have to worry that you can't get 5 stitches in on that needle, because we're not doing that today. You can conquer that later with little tiny stitches. But today we're gonna do this. And this was a cowboy little quilt, and my customer that I'm making the cowgirl quilt, they're having a little girl, and so this didn't work. So I'm still hand quilting this one, but I love that effect. I think that is okay. I forgot to tell you about the thread that you will want to use. I love Mettler's thread, quilting thread. I think you can still get it at Joann's. Pretty sure you can. And you want a number 40. You don't want to quilt with anything higher than a number 40. It's, I want my quilting to stand out a little. And now, if you don't, you know, when you're starting and you think, well, I don't want mine to show all my mistakes, then get you a thread that will blend in with your quilting. Like on this piece, get you a darker piece. But it is so, so pretty if you will go ahead and get just a neutral color. I never quilt with white. Why? I don't know. I think it just looks better with a neutral. And I wished I could tell you what this color is, but all it tells me is it's number 0781. But it is an ecru or a tan. I don't know what exactly color you would call that. But it blends in with the sashing. It blends in. See, every square, it looks okay. It looks okay on the teal, on the red, and it'll look really pretty on that. So that's what I do. Now, when you get your thread, don't get any more than about hand down to right up here. You don't want any more than that because it's too hard to work with. And you need a little tiny pair of scissors like this. Can't cut real short with a big pair of scissors. And I turn mine upside down and clip, and it works wonderful. So that's all of our tools that we need. Now, I don't want you, oh, I just laid my needle down. This is the little tiny needle that I was telling you about. It has a big enough eye in it though. You know, even though it's such a tiny little needle, I can thread it pretty decent. Now you watch me, I'm on camera, I'm not going to be able to do it. But you can thread it pretty easy. It's got a big enough eye in it, even though it's so tiny. Tiny little needle. And when I make a knot at the end, you just wrap it around your finger and pull down, and there's your knot. And cut it, you know, as close to the knot as you can, so you don't have a whole lot sticking out. Okay, there's our little knot. Now, to put your hoop on, this thing says one side, this one, somewhere on here it says, I'll find it. Says this side up. I know you can't see that, but that way you know which way to turn it. It says this side up. Let me get my quilt over here so you can see. Okay, here's where I've already got my stenciling on, okay? And I put it just dead center. To start with. And I've got me a little mark right up here so I know where to put the next stencil right by it. But I'm going to put this under here where it says this side up. This is just an old plastic hoop. And why do I use this? I like to have the feel of my needle under me. I like to hold with my hands, and it gives me control. If I've tried, my mother had a great big, about a 3-foot hoop. It was huge, big old heavy thing. And I tried using it, and I couldn't get my hands over in the middle of it to work with it. I hated it. So this is what I've learned to do. Now, unscrew this so that you've got, you know, quite a bit of leeway. And that's not enough leeway. Trying to get this where you can see. And center it as much as you can. So you've got as big a space as you can so that you don't have to move your hoop a dozen. You're going to have to move it a lot. But that's a minor thing to me. I don't mind doing that. I'm having to screw this out a whole bunch. And I still can't get it on. Okay, got it on pretty good, but we don't know what it looks like on the back. Oh, no, didn't have it on pretty good. Before I can turn it and do anything else, I've got to tighten this up, if it will let me. Well, I'm going to have to, oh, I've worked that up all the way out, haven't I? Okay. Let's see if we can't do this a little bit. All right, I pull it up so I can get a hold of it, and then I tighten this pretty good. Not all the way, not tight, but enough where it doesn't pop off when I want to turn it over. Okay, now let's see what we've got on the back side of it. Okay, we've got a big old wrinkle, and that's why. Now, just pull your fabric, not your backing, not anything. Just pull your fabric tight. The backing, not the batting, I meant. And just pull this up. And this is why you start in the middle and work your way out, because this way you can always pull your fabric to the ends. And do it on this side. It's hard to get a hold of it, but okay, that's pretty good, pretty good. Now turn it back over and continue to tighten. Just keep turning and keep turning and keep turning until it's so hard you can't turn it anymore, because you don't want this to come off while you're working on it. You want it nice and taut. Nice and taut. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now, my starting point on our stencil is going to be right here. And you just follow the loops and follow your pattern, and it'll take you right back to the end. A real good guideline. Now I want to show you how to put your needle in. When you start right here, and if you're not exactly on that line, don't sweat it. But I've got it pretty good. And you pull your needle up, and you've got your hand under there, and you're feeling, and you feel that knot, okay? Stick your needle somewhere back in there so you know where it is. And then take this and gently go around and around in a circle. And what you're trying to do is to pop that thread where that knot is in between your two layers of fabric. And this is kind of the aggravating part because you pull it up through a lot of times before. Go change directions and keep going until it pops. You'll have to feel and check it out because it went through. The knot's not there anymore, so don't pull on it any tighter, okay? Now, I'm going to change the camera angle now so that I can have it behind me and you can watch, because otherwise I can't do this upside down. So I'm going to change my camera angle and I'll be right back. Okay. You get in your minds, in your thinking, how big you want your stitch to be, the distance, because we're going to try to do them evenly. So I've inserted my needle and I'm going to bring it up, and the only way that I know how to do that is to put it up against your nail. And there's my first stitch. And I want the next stitch to be that same width. So pull your needle out to where you think you'll get about that much length in between. And then put it down and push and come back up. And there you have your stitches are the same length apart, okay? That's all I do, is have those two stitches on there. Which when you get done and you pull it out, it's like that. And now we're going to put our needle in the same distance. And it's not going to be 100% correct, but nobody's going to get down there with a magnifying glass. Don't worry about other people's criticism, because, like I say, they can't do it. So what does it matter? Now you're hitting the very middle of that line that you have done. And sometimes you'll say to yourself, why can't I do a straight line, for Pete's sake? I don't know why. Sometimes it's hard not to get that in there. But that is all there is to quilting. And like I say, it is so much fun. I love to see it develop. And you can't really get in a big hurry about it, because you'll regret it if you do. And then you just turn your work as you go, so it's always looking right at you, right down this way. Just keep turning. And remember, you want the same distance. And we're going to do the whole block, what we've already marked, before we take it off, before we put an iron to it to take it off. Do the whole thing. See my stitches? It is therapeutic. Now see, that little stitch is a little bit tinier than the other one. No big deal. I tried to be perfect, and I got tired of trying to be perfect. So now I just try to be very good and very precise, but I don't try to be perfect. When you're going around the curve, my needle, see, is to the right of this. It's not, well, how do I say it? My needle is far from this circle, but I still have hit the circle. the line. And so when I do this, all you have to do is just turn your work, get back in the middle. Your needle is already in the middle, but it didn't look like it because my needle was pointing that way. See my two stitches? And this is so much fun to do when you're sitting watching TV once you get used to what you're doing and don't have to concentrate so much. But I have learned to sit at the TV because I can put my feet up. And leaving your feet down at a sewing table for hours while you're quilting is not good. Now, as I go around this little curve, I'm kind of pushing my needle over. I kind of went around the curve. See right here? I kind of pushed my needle over and kind of went around the curve. You have to do that on a lot of round places like this. We're fixing to make this very first loop right here. And turn it again so that you're always looking at it straight down so that you can insert your needle right smack dab in the middle. Now this is all on a curve, so I'm going to have to turn it again. Hold my needle I'm kind of pulling it over to the right. Then insert it. And these little needles are pretty strong. But they, over time, do bend and you'll have to put in a new one. But see, that's how you do around a circle like that. There's no other way to do it. You have to kind of bend that needle to accommodate. And there we are going around. Now, I'm going to finish. I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to do the whole length of the thread. When I get down to the thread at the bottom, I will come back and show you how we're going to hide our thread, make a knot on the back side, because we want our back to look as perfect, if I can find it. Well, you can't even see it, can you? Can you see this? We want this to be as perfect as it is on the front, because the backing is going to be used on a baby quilt. It might be turned over, and you want that quilting to look fantastic on the back. And we don't want any knots or anything to be showing. So I will show you how to do that in just a minute. Before I get to the end, I want to show you one thing. Sometimes your loops are small, and you can't twist that needle enough to get around a loop. So do one stitch at a time around the curve. On these great big ones right here, no problem. But on these littler bitty ones right here, I was having a struggle getting 2 stitches in there. I can't do it without bending my needle to pieces. So 1 stitch at a time will work just fine till you get around where you can go straighter, okay? Just wanted to tell you that. And also, well, there's lots of little ones. See how small that one is? I'll have to go around one stitch at a time around the curve of it. And then when you get to your intersections, see right here where we went, we started up here and we went around this way. Well, then this has to go intersect over this. When you get there, put your needle under the intersection and bring it up to the next, just under it, and then start again. So when you cross, go as close, after your last stitch right here, then put your needle down under it and come back up right over here. And then there you go again, okay? Okay, one other thing. As I do this, I see all kinds of things I need to tell you. If you can see on this stitch right here, I bet you can't, but right here is a tiny, tiny little stitch. You see that little thing? I don't like that. That's part of the perfectionism in me, I guess. I put my needle under that thread and pull that back out. That's not acceptable to me. And I have too much space, really, between these two stitches. So I'm going to even go back to here. Then start all over. You won't be happy with it if you see mistakes that bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, then go with it. It's okay. But that bothered me, and I didn't like it. And if my spaces are, uneven, it's okay with me. But not a little tiny one like that. That just doesn't work. So that's what I wanted to show you. Try to have them as uniform as possible. Okay, another little tip. When you're going around and you hit your seams, it's thick, very thick, one stitch at a time, because you cannot, with 2 stitches, you cannot pull your needle through. It's next to impossible. So 1 stitch as you're working right here where your seams are, okay? Now, we are at the end, and leave about that much of a tail. And I know it's a waste of thread, but you'll see why. Stick your needle down in, like for your next stitch, the space between the 2. Turn it over. Find your needle and pull it up. Now, we want to make a loop, hold it down, put your needle through it. I've made a loop. Put your needle through it, hold the loop and pull this through. And try not to have it way up here. Okay, there's my knot right there. Now I'm going to put it back in, right exactly where I quit. Put it right back in there and go in between my fabric and my batting. And do a stitch, as long as you want. That much of it if you want to. Pull it out and pull your knot through, and it pops. And you've pulled that knot, and it's now in between the fabric. And if you want to do it again, do it again. put your needle through and bring it up. And now, there is no knot there, nothing. You trim it as close as you can. And our back is as pretty as our front. And that's what we want. And that's how you achieve it. And that's how you hand quilt. Now, if you were doing a stencil that had straight lines, you would want your stitches to be closer. But for this particular stencil, and there's one even smaller where it's really dense, but that's not necessary. This is dense enough. This is enough quilting on a baby quilt. It's holding the layers together good. It's ever 2 inches, and it works just fine because a baby quilt's going to be washed a lot. But this is a good stencil for a baby quilt. All right, now you know how to hand quilt. It's so simple. Once you run out of room, it's going to be too hard to stitch right here. See how my frame is right there? So you can't do that. So stop, a good that far from here. And do as much as you can, and then you unscrew this, take the top off, move it over, or move it down wherever you need it, tighten it up, be sure it's nice and straight on the back side, and then take off right where you finished, and remember how to put your needle up in your next stitch, pull it up in between until you hear it pop into your fabric. Sometimes it doesn't make a real loud pop. Sometimes it's just there. That's why you've got to have your hands under here and can feel. And that's why I like this little hoop so much. And gives me control, and I can feel what I'm doing. I so hope that helped you girls. Thank you so much for watching. And now you can hand quilt. God bless.